Hey, good evening. This is Dr. Ari Yaris. I blog at The Innovative Dad, and I'm a licensed psychologist here in Maryland. And I wanted to talk to you tonight about traps. The first thing, of course, that comes to mind when we hear about a trap is that off-quoted line from Star Trek. I think it's Admiral Akbar yelling, "It's a trap." And Return of a Jedi, I think it's become a little bit of an internet meme at this point. But I'm not talking about a trap that the Empire has laid out for the rebellion. I'm actually thinking about some thinking traps that we engage in, that our kids engage in. And this is something that, these negative thinking patterns that we get involved in are something that we focus on in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one of the approaches that I use in working with kids and adolescents to help break down or at least bring awareness to, because these cognitive distortions, these thinking traps that we're talking about right now, uh, are some of the things that can make them feel bad, make them feel negative about themselves. And when you can see that and notice it, then you have the ability to shift your thinking, which will in turn shift your feeling. And the key piece around cognitive behavioral therapy, you'll notice it doesn't have the word feeling in it. We're talking about dealing with cognitions or dealing with thoughts and then dealing with the behaviors as well that we have coming from them. And if we can triangulate essentially working on cognitive their cognitions, your thoughts, and on your behaviors, we will then be able to target that and work on those feelings. Okay? So there's a wide variety of them, and depending upon which list you're looking at, there's roughly about 10 to 12 that of these cognitive distortions, of these negative thoughts or styles of thought that are present in kids. So I'm going to go through a bunch of them and give you some examples of how they work and what they can do in terms of the thoughts, and even a little bit, here and there in terms of how to challenge them just a little bit. Uh, first one to sort of run with is this idea of all or nothing thinking. Sometimes you might hear it referred to as black and white thinking. It's this idea that you're only seeing things in two categories. Hence this idea of black and white. There's just no sense of shades of gray, no ambiguity in the middle of this. So for example, it's walking through your day. I've had a wonderful day. I had a great meal at a restaurant, and then walking into the bathroom and noticing that you've got a little spinach on your teeth, and then looking at that and suddenly thinking, oh no, the day is absolutely horrible. Everybody's been walking around thinking that I've got spinach in my teeth and it's awful. So it's sort of this sense of, if a little portion of how you wanted everything to go right isn't going well, then you've completely failed. There's no space for that sort of middle ground in there of, okay, well, this aspect of it didn't work, but I'm gonna work with it a little bit and sort of think about, okay, let me dwell on the positive here, and if I can focus on that, then it'll be okay. So that's one of them. Another is what we call emotional thinking or emotional reasoning. And this is believing that you feel something is true, even when there's no evidence otherwise to that fact. The comedian Bill Maher, in fact, does a whole sketch on this around, I don't know it to be true, but I think it is, kind of thing, or something to that effect. But it's this idea of, okay, I could, go dancing and, take this dance exam and just saying, oh, I don't feel secure. I'm just not going to do that. Um, and taking this feeling of insecurity about going and doing something and interpreting that to mean that I won't do well, or I'm feeling lonely, which means therefore that nobody likes me, which isn't true, and we can't show that. But we're thinking more with our feeling than we are with our rational self, and in doing that, to push against it, we want to kind of call out, well, what's the emotion that you're having here? What are you feeling? And how is this impacting you and leading you down the path towards this decision making that you've got going on? Okay, so another one is this idea of excessive generalization or overgeneralization, taking a small negative event or detail about a situation and turning it into a universal pattern. So it's like, well, I'm not going to go to that party because I know some of the people that are there are going to be weird. So which means everybody at that party is going to be weird, or at least back in the day when we get invited to parties. But this idea is they taking again something small. Oh, this person doesn't want to be with me, so therefore nobody wants to be with me. Or I messed up on this one little part of an exam, so now I'm awful at the entire subject. And really just getting stuck. And we do this as adults. Like, you've got your computer breaks, or your Zoom connection isn't working, and it's just sort of, well, everything is going wrong. So it's just as making this assumption that more stuff is going to suck based upon just one little thing being problematic. And the reality is that that's not true, but it can be tough to sort of get stuck in that spot and then not know what to do with it when we're there. So again, sort of calling out and saying, well, what's leading you to this conclusion, and asking that. So another area is labeling, and judging yourself by putting a negative label on yourself or on someone else. So you don't see the person that is sitting, behind the label. The idea of like, okay, well, I didn't make the team, so then I'm a horrible athlete. So I shouldn't do sports ever again. So I've labeled myself, or I stuck my foot in my mouth making small talk with that person. So therefore I've got absolutely no social skills, and I'm not good at communicating. And some of this is just showing all of the times that this isn't the truth for someone. And then we've got sort of, fortune telling, this sort of idea that you can predict what's going to happen. And if we just sort of think about it, or just sort of, some magical thinking of sorts in this, that, if I predict that it's going to go negative, then it will. So if you remember from when we were kids, step on your crack, break your mother's back, step on a line, break your father's spine, something like that. I'm sure I'm butchering it. But that is sort of this idea of magical thinking here, that, okay, if I do this, then this result is going to happen, even though there's no clear causation between the two of them. And that's, sort of problematic, because we get stuck, and we're reliant on this pathway of thinking that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But yet we all do this, prepping for presentations for our bosses, whatever, and our kids do this as well. Now, again, I'm going to pause for a second as I go through these. I'm about halfway through the list of them that I wanted to cover tonight. And a little bit of these is not problematic. We all do them. I mentioned a bunch of situations where we could do them ourselves. The challenge where they become a clinical problem is when they're overwhelming, when you're doing them all the time. And not everybody does all of them. Some of us do some more than others, but they are certainly present. One that I think we all frequently fall into is this idea of mind reading, and it's just assuming that we can read into somebody else's mind what they're doing, and without touching you, without coming near you, I've Vulcan mind melded with you, and I know everything that's going on inside of you, and we're sort of thinking and that we understand what's going on in terms of another person's head. So, thinking that, okay, well, I'm talking to this person, but they're not fully paying attention to me. So rather than thinking about that perspective, you're saying to yourself, they don't like me, or they hate me, when the reality may be that they're distracted or they're stressed about something else. Or just otherwise involved in something that's just not happening, in reality, because you've decided just to assume falsely that there is something else going on based upon just, what the read that you want to make of it. And sort of calling that out for any of us and saying, look, well, do you really know what's going on inside that person's head? Have you asked them? Have you, done some questions? Have you said, hey, while we're talking, blah, 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 are you okay? You seem a little distracted right now. And the person might not even realize that they've gotten distracted or that they've become preoccupied by some other thought. And they pull back in and become engaged in the conversation, for example. So then there's also catastrophic thinking. And we all do this. We take something small and we blow it up out of proportion. This idea of taking the negative consequences of a danger that you're seeing, and getting terribly upset by it. For like a comedic example might be, your kid walking up to you and saying, listen, this is a robbery, your money or your life, and then suddenly thinking, oh no, my child's going to become an adult bank robber, which is, catastrophic thinking. There's really no connection between this, but you can sort of see in all of these that we're sort of leading with a feeling as opposed to being in a place where we're dealing with any kind of a rational thought that's leading to this. And your kids do this, oh, we're going to go on a hike. Oh, I can't possibly go on a hike because it's going to be a disaster. And I'm going to go and I'm going to get sunburnt and I'm going to get tick. And then I'm going to get Lyme disease and it's going to be awful and atrocious. And when we're doing that, we're falling into creating a trap for ourselves, which is a common problem with anxiety and with depression, for example, is where we've increased the amount of danger that we're experiencing. So therefore, there are fewer resources with which to deal with it, and that we don't want to fall into that trap. Then we've got this idea of disqualification of the positive, or discounting the positive, or maybe minimizing it, and taking something that is positive that has happened and saying, okay, well, that really doesn't count because that's just, that doesn't outweigh all these negatives that I'm seeing over here. It's the idea of, bringing flowers or a treat to your loved one and having them look at you and go, okay, where did you screw up that you're bringing this to me? Or even just this thought, like I did well on something academically, but thinking to yourself, well, I just got lucky. You're just not taking into account any of the effort that you put into this. And in doing that, downplaying the things that would actually boost you up by engaging in these positive pieces. Then there's mental filters, which we all do, which is seeing the negative instead of looking at all the other positive aspects. So, example, if you're a dancer and your coach says to you, well, very good. If you could, it would be great if you could add a little bit more arm movements to that. And what's running through your head is, wow, what a shame. She didn't like it at all. But that's not what she said. She just, asked you to do something a little bit different with one part of it. It's getting stuck on just one small negative aspect of the things that you're dealing with, and you're focusing, almost with a sense of horror on this small thing and ignoring all of the other positive things that could possibly be going on. Like getting a paper turned back if you're a teenager, and not noticing any of the positive feedback on it, and only honing in on the places where they pointed out the mistakes that you think were stupid that you made. And you can see how, as I go over these, that they are, they can really pull you down in a way that is problematic and is exhausting. And this personalization is another one, and that's when something bad happens, we think it's our fault, even if we had nothing or very little to do with it. We see this with kids who are dealing with circumstances beyond their control. Like if maybe if I had behaved better, my parents wouldn't have gotten divorced. Or even thinking, I mean, some kids that I've worked with have thought about the illness of family members have been because they didn't remember to call people. And there's no connection to it. It's even just this idea there's something wrong with me that caused this for it to happen. And then there's ones that the shoulds or the musts, these sort of tyrant thoughts that we run into, where we're torturing ourselves with the kinds of things that we could have done or that we thought we should have done. We're trying to get the world to sort of be a specific way. I should be able to do this without having any problems. What's wrong with me? And all of these traps are frustrating for kids. They're frustrating for adults in that they really put us in a position where we're moving towards the negative, and that really then impacts our mood. And I think right now, given the stressors that our kids are under, that we're under, watching out for these negative thoughts is something to be very attuned to, because we can sort of help by addressing them, by calling them out and saying, hey, wait a second, that thought doesn't make sense. Why am I thinking that way? Or carefully challenging it in your child and sort of thinking through them, sort of move you away from spiraling towards negativity, which is, we want to make sure that when we're faced with problems, that what we're believing about ourselves and about the people around us, and about our future, if we keep thinking and feeling and acting in ways that produce the same negative results over and over, we're going to get stuck. So we really want to eliminate what can become a vicious cycle, and pull ourselves up in terms of trying to change negative thoughts in the long term. So I want to throw these out as things for us to look for, to be aware of, and just to be a little bit more informed in terms of sort of the way that our thinking can impact our emotions. Now, as always, if you are concerned right now with a loved one's mental health, with the stressors that are going on with the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all dealing with, please make sure that you reach out to your primary care doctor, to your child's pediatrician, to a mental health professional like myself, a psychologist or social worker, for assistance. Teletherapy is even easier to access now than it's ever been, and it is highly effective as a tool for working with kids and adolescents and adults of all ages. So with that, please feel free to check me out here on Facebook at facebook.com/enoparent, or on my website, which is www.ariaris.com, or I'm on Instagram and YouTube as well. Lots and lots of parenting resources that I've placed there to sort of help you figure out what it is that you can do to help your children thrive, particularly during these challenging times. So I bid you a good night and happy parenting.